All right, welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. This week, I've got a guest, brand new guest. Oh no, not new to me, new to you. Uh, I'm David Carr of Steward Your Business, where every week we come back and we talk about challenges business owners, leaders face in running their businesses, running honestly sometimes just their lives, their day to day. And this is where we're actually going to have Jesse come in and speak to a lot of different aspects of life and coaching, because Jesse and I go back. We met a number of years ago in a coaching program, and I thought it'd be great to have Jesse come on the podcast to share his journey of coaching and becoming a coach. And actually, Jesse and I are collaborating together as well through my company, Steward Your Business, Five Voices Boot Camp, a lot of great resources. And so you may actually hear Jesse pop up some more when you hear Steward Your Business or hear me sharing or more resources on what I offer. So, Jesse, welcome to the Business Roundtable Podcast. So glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, sir. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Jesse, you have a diverse background. And we were kind of laughing before we started recording this, of like going from not being coached or coachable. And I want you to share about this. But Jesse, you've been very successful in your career. At one point, and you and I got in a coaching program, particularly for relationships, because that was one of the areas we were focusing in our lives. And I would just like, just give a little background to our listeners, those that are coming back or watching us on YouTube, wherever they might be, as to kind of your journey and what has got you to, we'll get kind of your philosophy and approach, but what got you to coaching now and your passion for helping others through coaching?
So my journey kind of started back in like 2018. They started to go through a really nasty divorce. Wife of many years, over a decade, family, kid together,
Mhm.
built businesses together, had an affair, and I was devastated,
Mhm.
devastated. And um, I kept, instead of blaming her,
Mhm.
I really looked in the mirror and asked myself the question of what did I do or what did I not do?
Mhm. Mhm.
And, where did I fall short? And interestingly enough, the very next day, or maybe even that night, Empowered Man, run by Mark Santiago, popped into my news feed on Facebook. So I was kind of hesitant, and then, like, what the heck, clicked on it, scheduled a call. One thing led to another, and the next day I was in their Thrive group, which is their, top tier, premier program. And a bunch of group of successful men going through divorce or about to go through divorce or already gone through divorce.
Mhm.
And um, to your point, David, at first I was like, I don't need to be in here. These guys are a bunch of, they don't know what they're doing, this and that, what's going on. I thought I was better than everybody, to be honest.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I wasn't coachable. I was not humble. I wasn't being authentic with myself, first and foremost. And
Mhm.
I honestly pencil whipped the whole program. Completely did. It was a waste of $5,000 on my part. Um, and then after that, I still felt like, not whole, and felt like
Yep.
something was missing. And I still had the hurt and the pain from, the ongoing divorce. And that
Mhm.
was when the program we went through together,
Mhm.
Married
Mhm.
Game with Keith Yackey,
Mhm.
kind of popped
Yep.
in, and I started talking to Keith and signed up for that. And, thought at that time I might have a chance to rescue my marriage and start fresh.
Mhm.
That one I definitely gave a lot more effort, and I was a lot more humble. And I would, Keith called me out big time yeah, for not being coachable. He's like, he literally
Yep.
called me out. I'll never forget the call. He's like, dude, just stop. Just
Mhm.
stop. Stop being so egotistical. Stop being so prideful, and just shut up and listen.
Mhm.
And that really resonated with me because nobody speaks to me that direct.
Mhm.
I'm usually the one speaking that direct. And
Yep.
took a lot of chutzpah or a lot of cojones to say that to me. So I gained a lot of respect for Keith that day.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it was overnight, like magically coachable by any means.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I started to put more effort in. I started to be more open, more vulnerable. Started to own my stuff and take more
Mhm.
responsibility. for where I fell short throughout the marriage, and my eyes started really opening. Um,
Mhm.
and fast forward probably another half dozen programs, private coaches, mentors, Joey Wilder,
Yep.
going through NLP and biohacking certification, working with Jay Shetty, who I have utmost respect for, Matthew Hussey, Marnie from the Wing Girl Method, the F Formula, um, Jared from Modern Flirting and Dating, and Dale Valor. I did my fair share. And Kim Seltzer, she was my private coach for a while. And more and more I invested in myself, the more and more I got out of it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
as it went on, I really became so um, into it. And so the more I started opening up to it and being more receptive of it, the more
Mhm.
I got out of it, the more
Yep.
interested I became in it, and the more passionate I became. I don't want to say infatuated, that's the wrong word.
Yep.
The more interested that I was like, man, I feel like this is my calling. I just obviously I
Right.
got to keep working on myself. I'm barely
Yes.
scratched the surface. So I kept
Mhm.
going and kept going, and then friends, brothers, family members were going through some stuff, and I just started gradually, giving them some pieces, tidbits of things that I'd learned, and
Mhm.
and they'd come back to me and be like, Jesse, what you told me, that really worked. Like that really worked. And then I got into the flirting and dating side of it, the relationship side of it. And I couldn't give you a number on how many relationships I've saved, but it's a lot. Um, just with, you know, breaking it down to core values and, communication. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the bare bones of it is communication. It really is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Listening to each other. And that's also the bare bones of business. It's communication.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and then I just, to this day, you know, I, I went through some really dark times in my life recently, as you well know,
Yep.
and God touched me and
Mm.
literally said, Jesse, coaching, helping other people, this is what I built you for. It's what I made you
Mm.
for. Now you
Mhm.
finally realize it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I know, and we'll get into that further here. Some of these background and stories, but I think it's important that the folks that are listening to this podcast, this episode, many of you, well, hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast or this episode now, you'll realize that this is so important. This ongoing learning, development, becoming. But there are people in your life that probably are a little bit much like Jesse or I was too. Maybe I was not as forceful about it, but definitely uh, didn't wasn't doing the work on myself. And really, like you said, Jesse, this takes time. This is not a one and done. I'll just do the program and I'm done. Like you said, the first time you were in one. But this is an ongoing way of becoming. And so encouraging you wherever you're at in your journey. Oftentimes I think people, it's easy to go take a particular class on, a technical skill. But some of these things that we're talking about, like you said, relationships and some other things, are not so technical as well as, if you will, like, like going and taking a class at a college or something like that. These are being coached is different than being taught or a teacher. It's a different skill set to, number one, to have. It's another one also to be received. I mean, if you played sports, you probably had some kind of coach, and that's most of the people's experience of a coach. And that truly is a coach. They're guiding you, they're asking you questions, or helping you become better at whatever that. And they might teach you something, but that's not their main job. Is not to teach you particularly. It's to help coach you in that space. So if you would, Jesse, like, share a little bit about your current, now you mentioned a number of folks that you've worked with over the years, and had experience. What would you say, moving from this place of I'm not being coached at all to I'm going all in, I'm being coached, and now to this philosophy of like, I want to help others. Like you just mentioned, the relationships you're saving, the passion that you have for helping others. And just kind of talk a bit about further about that and kind of your philosophy now as a coach. What as you develop yourself and help develop and guide others.
So yeah, you hit it just real quick on what you said. There's a
Yeah.
couple really good points you made as far as being coached. Not everybody's coachable,
Hmm.
and it's ego and pride. Guys
Hmm.
especially need to let go of their ego and pride. Dude,
Yep.
you may not just be, you just may not be coachable. Being coached just may not be for you, or you just need to let go and drop your ego. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
unless you go all in, you'll never know. So
Mhm.
real quick on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as relationships go and dating, and having gone through being married, dating, being married, dating after being married in my
Mhm.
40s, um, and seeing just how people date and how people talk to each other and communicate with each other, it's honestly disgusting.
Mm.
The level of communication is sickening. Just the
Yeah.
way people speak to each other, they don't listen to each other. There's no active
Mhm.
listening. There's no empathetic listening. People aren't really hearing each other, and you can't expect to have a successful business or relationship, whether it's romantic or platonic, unless you actually are truly hearing what the person is saying. Both men
Mhm.
and women want to be heard and understood.
Absolutely.
And it seems like such a very simple thing,
Mhm.
but almost everyone gets it wrong.
Mhm. Yeah.
And what my goal is to really help open up people's eyes of how we're making other people feel with the way we're communicating. And by
Mhm.
doing that, you need to first dive deep into how are we communicating?
Mhm.
What's our communication style? What's the other person's
Mhm.
communication style?
Mhm.
As men,
Mhm.
what's our leadership style? How are we leading the women in our lives?
Right.
How are we leading other people in our lives? How are we leading our families? If you don't know your leadership style, then you cannot effectively communicate your leadership. And in a
Absolutely.
relationship, women crave leadership. Women need to be led, not want, need to be led by the men that they choose.
Mm.
And it's our job, it's our responsibility as men to lead the women we choose. And that's
Mhm.
where a lot of men, almost all men, fall short, is lack of leadership.
Would you
And
say, Jesse, just real quick on that, because I agree with you, um, in the sense of any whether or, any I as a follower of any you wanna make sure this leader knows themselves, right? Like, if you how would you expect anybody to follow you if you don't appreciate who you are,
right,
as a person, as an individual? Why and you said dating is a good example too, Jesse. Why would somebody want to date you if you weren't clear about who you are, what you can bring, and the value you can bring, and how you can help other people? I feel like your communication, what you said was our communication is broken because I feel like a lot of it is transactional and extracting from one another.
very
You'd say
true.
that's attract yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and to add on to that, David, is social media has, and cell phones in general. Put your phones down, people. Be present. You know,
Mhm,
be present with the person you're with, whether it's your family, your partner. You're in a business meeting. Put your phone down. It can wait. Flip it over. Put
mhm,
it on silent.
mhm,
Leave it in the car. It can't be that important. It's not that important. If you're choosing to be in a relationship, you're choosing to be out on a date night with your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend. You're
mhm, mhm.
choosing to be there and spend quality time with them, which is a love language, which we can get
Yeah,
into that a whole nother time.
yeah, yeah.
Quality time is so important because that's the time that people think about when we're not around them. And as men,
Mhm,
if we want our women to stay with us and respect us and honor us and stay loyal to us, you have to give them the quality time that they need and want, the emotional support and emotional fulfillment, or else they're going to go somewhere else to get it.
right. Well,
And back to what you
yeah.
said, David, is um, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just as you're saying, they're gonna go somewhere else, Jesse. That just made me think of it's the same thing, different relationship. But think about this as an employer or employees. If they're not feeling appreciated, looked after, right? When you say lead, I just want to clarify, at least from my when I use that word lead, it's serving others. It's a way of lifting up others. It's not a place of power and manipulation. And because sometimes I think some people might be triggered by the word lead, meaning like, oh, I'm being led around. No, you're choosing to be led because you know the person has the best interest of you at heart and wants to care and watch over you, not unfortunately, we've heard leaders or people leading in a place of manipulation, aggression, all of that other stuff we've talked about on other trainings, and Jesse, with you and I from our Five Voices group coaching and things like that. So I just want to clarify because like some people might be triggered by the word. Well, I don't want to be led, but be understanding what we're talking about, a healthy leader, right, Jesse?
Right. Yeah. So to add on to that, yeah. So what we're talking about when women, people in general crave leadership. Is when we talk about leadership, we're talking about not you do what I say as I'm a dictator. No, that's not what I mean.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
understand, uncover needs,
Mhm.
effectively support and know what the people that that follow you, that look up to you, that respect you, that are part of your domain, your kingdom, that you are the
Yeah.
leader of. And again, I'm not
Yes.
saying dictator, I'm saying as the leader. No, and again, this is just the people who look up to you,
Mhm.
as a leader, is you need to understand what their needs are in order to meet them. So if you're not effectively
Mhm.
communicating with them, you're not effectively listening to their needs, then you cannot be an effective leader. And that goes for all
Mhm.
relationships, business or personal.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. You've already hit a little bit on kind of challenges that we're facing in today's age. If you want to be a leader, right? You said, being fully present because of social media and cell phones, right? And like you said, if we want, and on the Business Roundtable podcast, we're targeting business leaders, but you can take any of this stuff, like you're talking about, Jesse, scale or grow your business. Well, what about how are you growing and nurturing your family or your relationships in your community? Maybe it's a nonprofit you're a part of or a group or whatever. How are you stepping up as a leader in those organizations or those relationships? And so I think you hit on a huge one that's not going to go away anytime soon with our cell phones, with our social media, with the distractions that are all out there, right? And where we get short sighted and kind of drawn somewhere. And I would say, you and I were just talking about this on another training recently about um, being intentional versus kind of accidental in the way that things are showing up in our lives. So maybe you could speak a little bit about maybe your journey too, Jesse, from hey, I'm not really being focused. I'm just kind of just going with whatever is here in front of me, right? Because there's always going to be things that are going to be vying for your attention, whether it's your phone or what, you know, or maybe it's even a client knocking on your door, but for the wrong reasons. You're getting distracted from the things that are most important. So can you talk a little bit about kind of how you've created a life of intention, Jesse, by how you've chosen to be coached and now you want to help others be coachable and apply these things intentionally?
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and I'm not going to say I'm perfect at it by any means,
Mhm.
not even close. It's a work in progress every day for the
Yeah.
rest of my life. However, I'm self-aware of it and I'm putting the work in, and that's key for everything we're talking about. Is
Mhm.
you're never going to be perfect at anything we're talking about. However,
Mhm.
knowing about it, being self-aware about it, and putting that
Yeah.
work into it is the only way you're going to grow.
Mhm.
On that point is, yeah, I mean, I feel like how effective of a leader you are, how intentional of a leader you are in your business, and
Mhm.
the success of your business in the current state is a huge reflection of everything else going on in your life. How are you effectively leading your family? How are you, if
Mhm.
you are, like you said, church, nonprofit, how are those performing?
Right.
You know, everything in our personal lives carries into business. And
Mhm.
similarly, everything in our business carries into our personal lives. Whether we want to believe it or not, or admit it or not, they are completely
Mhm.
interconnected and always will be.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, sometimes we forget to separate the two.
Mm.
And as far as for me living intentionally, that's been a huge point of contention for me over the last many years, because all my years in real estate, 20 plus years in real estate and mortgages, I was never present. Even if I was present physically, I wasn't actually
Mhm.
present mentally, emotionally. I'd have an
Mhm.
earbud in my ear talking to a realtor while I was cooking, or even at the dinner table talking to an attorney or a client, answering the phone at 10 o'clock at night when I should be watching a movie with my wife. Um, that was intentional, but intentional for the wrong reasons.
Mhm.
Um, as far as accidental goes, I slipped into the accidental after the wrong intentional,
Mm.
meaning I went, well, obviously what I was doing didn't work, so I'm just going to let it go and see what happens.
Yeah.
Obviously, that
Yeah.
didn't work either.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, David, it wasn't until really I started connecting with you again, and
Yeah.
on the Five Voices,
Yeah.
um, and with Steward Your Business, that I really started looking at how am I living intentionally? Am I even living intentionally? making intentional choices, and recognize that I am, but there was a ton of room for improvement.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the biggest things for me as far as intentional decisions and choices, I needed to get back into list making and chunking my lists, because as business owners, as executives, we have so much on our plate every single day. I mean, David, you can list off by 100 things you did today, if not more. And if we try to make a list that's 100 things long that we even expect to do 2 of, it's never going to happen. You have to, prioritize the tasks. I call it chunking. It's a method. I didn't create it. But you prioritizing that, I feel like that's a huge thing about living intentionally, making intentional decisions and choices in your personal life and in business, is to make intentional choices. You need to know what the choices are first and foremost, identify them. Second, what's the action? Third, execution. And if we're just leaving it up to chance, don't be surprised when you get a plate of coal. So for me, that's one of the things that I've been doing mostly, more so rather. I'm still working on it. I've been much more intentional about blocking out personal time. I talk to my son, when he's not with me. I block out 2 hours to talk with him on Google Meet, even though usually a phone call only lasts a half an hour. Sometimes, though, he wants help with homework. It can go up to 2 hours. So again, this is an intentional choice now, is me looking at, I want to talk to my son for up to 2 hours, if not longer. So I'm going to plan for, professionally and personally, in the rest of my life, I'm going to plan for that 2 hours, hope for that 2 hours, because that's what I want. I'm not going to block out a half an hour and then now either disappoint my son and tell him I got to hop off and do a work thing, because that's not being an effective leader. That's disappointing him, which I've already done enough of. Done doing that. Or, if I block out 2 hours, previously I would have been like, oh, well, I could have squeaked in, this much more work stuff, blah, blah, blah. So what?
Right.
Squeeze it in another place. So those are the kind of things that I've changed my mindset to that it can wait. There are things that can wait. And that's something that I was terrible at my entire career up till recently.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into a couple things you talked about there, Jesse. You asked, or I think you said this, but this is one question I ask for as a coach. Oftentimes, this is what do you want? Are you clear with what you want? Until you said, I want to have this longer conversation with my son. So you're being intentional and you're doing it. This is what coaches do. They help you get clarity and uncovering some things so that you can make intentional choices. If you want to have a deeper relationship with your son, and like you said, one of the ways is, well, we could be on Google Meet for up to 2 hours, because I know that these things come up, versus kind of, well, thinkingly, like, oh, like you said, well, you're thinking a bigger picture here is what I hear, Jesse, and looking at that versus just kind of being reactionary and like, well, I'll just squeeze in 15 minutes here or there, or kind of, tuck it in with other things. And so, a good coach is going to ask you some really key questions. What is working? What isn't working? Why do you want to do what you're doing? Or do you is this serving you? And so what I hear you say, Jesse, is you've been doing this, applying these questions to yourself, and then starting to turn and shift the story into, this is what I really want. I'm going to start to take these actions so I can actually make it happen. But it didn't just come up and say, oh, one day I was like, okay, I'm going to put 2 hours for my son. It's like going from 0 to that.
Shoot, I got to call my kid. Now you're disappointing maybe 3 other clients or other people that you'd already made plans with as well. So that intentional is planning, planning. If you're going to live intentionally, you have got to plan. And that comes down to what I heard you just say, what I know you live by to the core, is you have to intentionally plan for contingencies. Also have to plan for, I'm going to go skiing with my kids. You already know, David, right? You already know the day before you're going skiing. No matter what happens between now and then, you're not going to back out of that. That's an intentional choice.
Yeah. And then see others see how you show up that way. And I find that's again living by example. If any good coach, and this is why you and I started talking again, and I said, well, hey Jesse, I've got steward your business, and how can we find synergies to work together, collaborate together? Because I saw what you're doing in yourself, and I'm like, these are the people I want to surround myself with, because you'll go further together. So if you, but you've got sometimes you've got to be the first person to take the step. You're taking that lead. That's what I see with you, Jesse, with your son and others in relationships. Is like you sometimes, we can't wait for others. We've got to make the first move. And I think sometimes leaders may be hesitant because they may not get it right. And oftentimes you probably aren't going to get it right the first time. You're going to have inconsistencies. But can you speak to that, Jesse, about, I know this is a challenge for all of us, and I know you've had it faced head on where, you start and you drop the ball, but yet you still know where you want to go. You've made it fumbled. Can you speak to just, that there's going to be obstacles or challenges that come when you adopt this lifestyle and way of being?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
In
go ahead.
business, anyone successful in business didn't get it right the first time on anything they did.
Mhm, mhm.
So you've already, whether you consciously or subconsciously, accepted the fact that you're going to fail however many times throughout the development and growth of your business. You did at some point, and you pivot, reflect, look what happened, learn from, okay, well, that didn't work.
Mhm,
Where can I adjust? And it doesn't have to be a major adjustment. That's the key thing too. In business, especially, you don't have to make a
mhm,
huge adjustment sometimes. Sometimes it's just a slight adjustment in a marketing strategy without
mhm.
changing anything else.
Right.
A few keyword changes, a couple picture changes in the print ad or the digital ad, whole different ballgame,
Mhm,
right? So, yeah, you have to pivot. You're gonna fail. You're gonna fail. No matter
mhm.
in life in general. And the sooner you can accept you're gonna fail a lot, you're gonna fail more than you're gonna succeed. That was hard. That was a hard pill for me to swallow, years ago.
Mm,
And
yeah.
accepting that I failed at my marriage, that was a really hard pill to swallow. Um, but once I swallowed that pill and that dose of medication kicked in, the truth serum I call it,
Mhm,
and um and I really started to recognize, Jesse, it's okay to fail.
mhm.
You're okay. It's actually a good thing to fail because it means you're putting in effort. Because if you
Yeah,
didn't fail, it means you're not trying.
right?
If you
Yeah.
didn't fail multiple times, it means you're getting kicked down, you're getting knocked down, but you're not dusting yourself and getting back off and pivoting and reworking it and trying again. If you didn't get knocked down multiple times, you're not doing it right. The more
Mhm,
times you get knocked down, the stronger and more effective a business leader and leader you are in your life, personal life, you are, because it means you don't give up until you get it right.
mhm. That's so important. I can't remember the exact quote or attribution to Steve Jobs had one of these things like you're saying, Jesse, from especially in technology. He wanted to see failures in his team because he knew that they were trying to innovate and try new things and grow. If you talk to somebody and they have all the answers, they've never had a problem or a challenge, or they come off, I would be very weary if not any, probably even run the opposite direction of that person, because like you're saying, Jesse, they're I know you're very physical too. Exercising and things like that. For anybody that's done, any real physical exercise, it wears on you. You fatigue. There's a point of failure by design. Literally, you cannot lift the weight up anymore because you're completely exhausted. You've completely stretched your body to the extent that it can go at that moment in time. But if you don't do that, you'll never get stronger beyond that point, right, Jesse?
Correct.
That's it. You hit a ceiling.
Right. The plateau. And
Yeah,
that's what happens
plateau.
with businesses. And that's where Steward Your Business came along from.
Mhm.
If,
Yep.
is businesses plateau. And it's
Mhm.
not due to ineffective leadership. It's due to uh, run out of pivots, pivot points, or so involved and so emotionally involved in that business that they can't see that 30,000-foot view anymore of,
Mhm.
well, where's the next path? Where's the next turn we take to get on the next road, the next highway, to
Yep.
the next, to the next stopping point? And that's where Steward Your Business comes in, as far as helping guide people and show them the way, show them the light, uncover that light, and to help you grow and help you, get past that muscle plateau.
Yes.
In business, you've plateaued. And that doesn't mean that you've plateaued forever. It just means right now you need a new coach. You need a new nutrition routine, new after workout routine. And you might just need a little more sleep and a little more recovery time. And with the right coach, you'll be back on top, and in the world championships again soon.
Yes. No, absolutely, Jesse. And that's why, our synergy, and you've been a part of the 5 Voices Bootcamp, some of the other resources I have. And again, like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, you may hear Jesse a little bit more as he's involving himself with some of the initiatives that we're doing here at Steward Your Business, because of our shared philosophy of continual growth and becoming, like you said, Jesse. There's never an end to the journey. It's a matter of, okay, there's a plateau. How do we pivot? How do we adjust? And I value, as you guys hear on the podcast every week, we have different voices coming in, speaking at different aspects of business, because we're all in this process of learning and becoming, and not staying in a silo or isolated. Because honestly, that's where, like you said earlier, Jesse, we become, if we do that, we can lack self-awareness and understanding, and we don't get these other voices and perspective. And so it's practical in your business, it's practical in your personal life. And so we're going to have Jesse back on the podcast because there's so much to unpack here.
There's a lot to unpack, and we barely scratched the surface.
Right? There's just so much. We're just scratching the surface, because I wanted to have you on, Jesse, just to get folks getting to know you a little bit more, hear your journey. Jesse's working on a number of coaching programs and aspects in his own company as well, and where he's growing. But I love having him as a collaborator and part of Steward Your Business and what we're developing here. But Jesse, as we're coming to the end of the podcast for today's episode, what would you kind of just leave, nuggets of if somebody's listening to this, and if they would take away 1 or 2 things, like, hey, okay, if you got nothing else out of this podcast and listening to Jesse's journey, and I want you guys to follow Jesse, you can look him up on LinkedIn, and we'll post all the links of how they can connect with you, Jesse, so they can see more and see your actual journey, literally from where you've been. And there's a whole bunch more we're going to unpack in future episodes and discussions with Jesse about some of the dark places that he's been, but thankfully he's come out on the other side here. But what would be some of the, 1 or 2, what kind of your biggest lesson learned being coached and now becoming a coach, so that others can connect with you, Jesse, and learn more and have a conversation with you about, hey, what would it be like to be coached with you, Jesse, and go from there.
So I would say is be humble. It's never too late. You're never too old. It's never too late. You've never fallen too far in your life, even though it may seem like it. It may seem like you're in the darkest, most horrible place. It's never too late, and you're not too deep. And there are coaches that have been there. Believe me. I've been there, and it's never too late. You have to be humble. You have to network, and you have to trust and be vulnerable. Vulnerability and humility are 2 of the most unbelievable traits that I've honed and allowed to be stewards of my life in the last 6-7 years, and they've served me very well. And once you start your journey, don't ever stop. David and I are proof of every day we grow. Every day. And I know there's a lot of memes out there that say, be the best version of yourself. That's not true. You can't ever be the best version of yourself. Otherwise, you'd be God, and we know there's only one. Always be growing. ABG. Only be the best version of yourself, better version of yourself you were a minute ago, an hour ago, yesterday, day before. You can only be better than you used to be. Live in the present, be present, future's undetermined. It's what you make of it.
So many good nuggets there, Jesse. You just laid it out. You just boom, laid it out on us. As we're wrapping up the podcast, I just want to say thank you, number one, Jesse, for being on the podcast with us and sharing these nuggets. We're looking forward to having you come back again and share
Thank you for having me.
much more with us. And for those of you that, maybe catch Jesse in one of the boot camps or the group coaching programs, he's part of that as well and sharing his insights there. So we would love to have you come visit that. And we're just, again, grateful for you guys liking, subscribing, following us along YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever your favorite podcast platform is. We're there, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, all those good ones. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think. Put a comment in here. What was a key takeaway that Jesse shared, or some of the comments that we talked about today. Just again, thank you, Jesse, for being on here. And I look forward to having you guys all back again for our next podcast episode of the Business Roundtable. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.